Sup Shredders, my name is Logan, aka Spiderhands, and welcome to an SP Reacts, where today we have ourselves a track from an act named AvertedVision titled That Road I Run To. And if we switch over to here, we have ourselves a track on the screen on YouTube. Now, I've listened through a few tracks from AvertedVision at this point. It'd be good to hear more, and we're going to listen through this track from start till finish, and we're going to hear what we think. Let's go. What do we got? Interesting guitar tone to it.
When the weight gets heavy, I know where to steer. A stretch of nowhere where I disappear, where I can breathe.
There's like a fuzziness to a lot of it, which is a kind of unusual tone. The side chaining of the mix by the drums is interesting.
I needed somewhere to bury my shame, didn't want my children to see me break. They'll never guess I'm living this way, fighting the silence for their sake. No crack in my armor, no tear in my face. They ask if I'm fine, yeah, I fake that grace. Turn that key, feel the rumble ignite, chasing down ghosts.
I like the triplet flow at the end of that stanza.
Starts to fade. I hear my father's voice like it's yesterday. On that road, my mind's unchanged. I keep driving off the way, refuse to change. So when the weight gets heavy, I know where to steer. A stretch of nowhere where I disappear, where I can breathe and release the fear. Stare down the shadows that whisper in my ear. I load my anger, I drag my grief. All the questions that give me no relief. It's where I met God, in the dust and the heat. Just him and me and the sound of my heartbeat.
Like, it's fairly sort of like simple to understand what the track is about like a parent or a father's responsibility to be strong for their kids and dump what the problems onto them, but also themselves needing their own time out with their motorcycle and going around the place with God and him in the desert. Like, I understand what's going on here. I like that you get that fairly early on.
I sowed my effort in the dirt and the rain, try to grow something from all this strain. But a man's bouquet only blooms once, when you laid to rest and your name's engraved. Now I feel the ache my old man knew. It's etched in my bones, it's carved in truth. He said a house ain't a home till you build it deep, on respect, on love, on promises you keep. If these walls could speak, they call me out, say I gave up quick when I felt doubt, say I'm not strong enough, not standing tall, that I scorch every scene with the fire. Oh, if these walls could speak, they know.
Interesting way of switching up the halfway point of a verse to kind of make it different to the previous two times.
By swallowing words I should have explained. I'm fractured in places the eye can't find. I pray there's a heaven, 'cause hell's in my mind. It's eating away at the depths of my soul, and I'm paying the price with a life on hold. When the weight gets heavy, I know where to steer.
The song kind of sounds like it's being put into a wind turbine, production-wise. Okay, that's a beautiful track. I enjoyed my time with it. I think that's very well done. And we're going to talk about the song more and the conclusion. And so welcome to the conclusion of my review of this track from an act named AvertedVision titled That Road I Run To. Now, I think that the song is about someone, a father, who is trying to be strong again for their children, and they're not letting it crack through the armor. But at the same time, they're having a really difficult time with it, and they're just, struggling. And they remember what their dad used to say, their father and their old man, and it kind of like parallels with them now. And it's, I think it's something that a lot of people will be able to relate to, trying to sort of like carry and cope with our feelings and stuff that we haven't necessarily been aware of, all the promises, everything, all our regrets, etc. And realizing how they sort of catch up on you, and it's a time in the moment you feel that weakness and let it in, it starts to build and grow and sort of overwhelm you. I think the message is important. I think that it's solace for people who maybe feel like they're alone going through this, and it's something that like lets not that it should be, they shouldn't take care of yourself and try and find ways to heal, but it's a common thing. So I think that one of the things this does well is simply focus on the storytelling element of it. While I consider that it does a very good job of letting you know what it's about almost very, very, very quickly into it. Like literally when the weight gets heavy, I know where to steer, stretching away where I disappear. You understand very quickly that there is potentially more than meets the eye. But just having someone, again, like having the vocals be done in a way where it sounds like someone calling out, or it's sort of like with a sense of exasperation and how they sound tired even though there's grit to it. It's just a sort of dry, kind of raspy approach to vocals that I appreciate. It's a competent performance with some really interesting melodies, and I like how it harmonizes with the rest of it, but also I think the expression is appropriate. I feel like the mixture of different steel strings and distorted or heavier guitars is great for a contrast, sort of in terms of the intensity between the verse and chorus sections. I think that the drums have a nice sort of tone and body to them there, where they're thick and full in the mix without being too overwhelming. And I can hear the bass line and parts of the verses there, which is nice and resonant in the low end there. It's just a very kind of well-rounded composition, I suppose. And I think that some of the synth pads or more atmospheric layers that you have in a lot more low-key parts add a kind of a weird warmth and mistiness or mystery to it there. It makes it kind of seem a little bit ethereal or otherworldly. They're almost like we're in our head and going through that universe itself. And I think that when you consider the subject matter of people going through their own mistakes and trying to figure out how they could have done things differently and stuff like that, it makes a total amount of sense. Like I respect the effort and the polish put in to try and have the instrumental layers connect with it. Being within that minor key, having minor orients to it with occasional major turns and stuff like that, but ultimately being more of a sad sounding song because of the chord choices, the melodies and everything like that. I think those heavier elements from the guitars in particular come through really neatly. And I think the vocals as the focal point is a smart move, simply because, the backing changes to suit that. There's not a huge amount of adjustment of the way the vocals are handled and performed. I don't necessarily know if it benefit from that anyways. So I think that there's a good sort of sense of balance there. In terms of like the final things, so you should talk about three things. I think that the structure is kind of more sort of oriented around the vocals anyway, so they're kind of two in a pod. And I think if there was any sort of like feedback or constructive critique I could apply, or just simply thoughts which I feel could potentially have improved the experience, I feel like you could have potentially had an alternate lead layer come in the final third of the track there, maybe like a wistful kind of guitar line to kind of feed off of maybe the bridge or something like that before going back into that chorus section. or maybe have introduced like an alt lead to then have continued to sort of like go off, almost maybe like the bird flying over the motorcycle as you go through it, maybe your hopes and dreams like fading away like a balloon. I'm not sure, like maybe that's a bit dark, but I still nonetheless appreciate that the vocals is maybe the storytelling voice. You can just maybe have both. You could maybe have both or more, or you know, it could be the same as it is. It's just a subjective thing, right? But I think where there's potentially more of a point of contention is the production there, where I feel like there was just a bit too much fizziness with this one. There was a bit of a kind of weird kind of like fuzz there with a lot of the components, especially the guitars. They sound a bit kind of glitchy or kind of like phasey. And so I think that for future releases, where like a lot of the stuff that's come through from AvertedVision has sounded pretty clear for the most part, I think if we can continue that continuity in terms of the production value for those tracks, it'll be really good. I'm not saying this was done badly, like you could hear that the mix itself was done in a way where the instruments were leveled, then you could tell there's attention to detail with the tones and textures of the ingredients. It's just that the final version of it was just a bit kind of like, again, as I said, fuzzy and a little bit too kind of sizzly for my tastes. But ultimately, those are my thoughts on this track from an act named AvertedVision. Ultimately, I think the highlights were the instrumental parts as well as the vocal parts. I think it's just the production. I feel like we could potentially do a few things with it, just simply. But anyways, like that's my thoughts on it. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Good message regardless. If you enjoyed this track, please do go show them some love via the various social medias and the YouTube page, and stay cool and stay safe, and please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as they need the help more than ever with all the crazy stuff going on in the world. And I'll catch you in the next SP Reacts. Spiderhands out.